Hello everyone and welcome back to Q&Play, my monthly Q&A series where I answer your questions in a rambly, unscripted format. It's kind of weird that I call it that, considering that none of my videos are scripted, and all of them are technically rambly, but here we are anyway. Our first question comes from CantandRobbyFlores. What moment had your table speechless, as in jaws dropping, what the hell just happened? Okay. So, there are a couple times where I've tried for a good twist, and I think that they're normally pretty decent. My main issue is that my foreshadowing can use some serious work, because if you're going to try to pull off a jaw-dropping twist, you should probably foreshadow it. But with everything going on in D&D, often your foreshadowing can be forgotten, and if you do remember it, you might accidentally make it too heavy-handed. So, I try to keep it on the back burner, and usually I won't include it at all because I will just forget. However, there was a twist that was pretty well foreshadowed in my first campaign. So essentially there is this guy named Crawford Cyrillish. He's a Machiavellian manipulator in my first campaign, and one of his, and really his only special ability, other than this, he's just a normal dude, but his only special ability is that he can be in multiple places at once by creating simulacra, essentially. Simulacra that in my world are made more of this misty, ghost-like substance. So he can do that, and the party know he can do that. So keep that in mind. He can create simulacra and take command of these separate bodies. So yeah, keep that in mind. Down the line in the campaign, Crawford isn't brought up much, but the party joins up with a conspiracy known as the Royalists, and they are joining up with these guys so they can fight against a cult that is wormed its way into the royal court. They need to work against the law, work with this underground conspiracy, and flesh out the cult in the main capital city known as Ardinia. It was a great arc, lots of really cool fights and missions. Now, of course, it all went horribly wrong because the leader of the conspiracy, Halderon, killed the rest of the royalists that opposed him, kidnapped the queen that the conspiracy rescued, and tried to kill the party. They did survive, but still, he tried very hard, and the party thought they were dead because it was poison. They ended up surviving, but they were in a 2-week coma, and that time skip gave me a lot of room to mess up the world while they were away. But yeah, Halderon turned out to be really evil. One of the people that he killed in the conspiracy was a political leader named Cyrus Borgov. He was helping to keep the political sphere away and make sure that the guards don't influence or mess with what the royalists were doing. Now, Cyrus has been kind of suspicious throughout this entire endeavor. However, the party never really suspected him because he was a really nice dude, and he also died. He got stabbed, so it was pretty clear cut. Now, they didn't know why Halderon killed him particularly. He's been helping the royalists. When the sovereign of the north, Datius Cyrillish, attacked a bunch of soldiers from Ardinia, he was the one that calmed down the situation, and in exchange for a couple political positions, he allowed Ardinia to not get attacked by this powerful warlord. He was helping the royalists by keeping the political sphere sated. He was helping Halderon. He's been keeping the peace. So why did Halderon kill him? Well, it was later revealed that Cyrus Borgov was Crawford Cyrillish, brother of that warlord that I mentioned just a second ago, the entire time. The plot was that Cyrus approached Halderon, told him, hey, I will help you fund this conspiracy, I will help you build up this conspiracy as long as you flesh out the cult for me. Crawford bankrolled the whole thing. He took the form of Cyrus to stay undercover. He's the one that brought the party in, the entire business to begin with, and when Halderon betrayed him, because Halderon got a little bit too power hungry, Crawford is the one that ended up blowing up his castle by opening a portal to an eldritch dimension, which the party really got screwed over with that because they were inside the castle at the time trying to rescue some of their friends that Halderon captured. It was a really intense moment, and when Cyrus reappeared, the party were like, oh my god, thank god you're alive. But then he reveals his true identity, and they were floored. It was an amazing moment. But yeah, I do think that it wasn't a perfect twist. I think it could have been foreshadowed a little bit more, but I liked all the ins and outs. As mentioned before, Cyrus Borgov, in huge, massive scare quotes, gave political power to Dataya Cyrillish, the Sovereign, this warlord. That's Crawford Cyrillish's sister. As Cyrus, he gave his sister a lot of political power using his inn inside of the capital. So that was a great little moment. The party were slowly starting to figure it out after I revealed who Crawford was. That political power resulted in Crawford taking even more power as himself. No disguise needed. It was great. The party were not happy that he ended up screwing them over, but Crawford actually survived the whole campaign. I thought they would kill him for that, but they actually kept him alive, and he ended up being one of the most compelling characters throughout the rest of the campaign. He had this very interesting mentor position with a couple of the party members. If you want to hear more about that, you can listen to the Roll for Insight episode where I talked to my D&D party. It was great, and I hope that there are many cool twists to come. Next question comes from Pepjin Poolman. You mostly talk about D&D and fantasy, but do you have any experience on either side of the GM screen with other genres like space opera, cyberpunk, horror, and the likes? And do you have any ambitions to run or play any RPG outside of fantasy? I really like the cyberpunk aesthetic, but I don't have any ambitions to play that sort of RPG right now, especially since, like I've said multiple times, I don't really have a lot of time on my hands to learn an entire new system and run an entire new game. I'm very comfortable in D&D. Like, I really, really love the fantasy world-building aesthetic. I love it. I love the world of Dungeons & Dragons. I love the world that I've homebrewed and created, and I really don't just intend to use it for one game. I put in a lot of effort into it, way too much for me to just throw it out after one game, right? So while I would love to expand and play in a cyberpunk game, for example, which I do really want to because I like the cyberpunk aesthetic, I just don't really have time to. I do have experience with horror. I've played in one Call of Cthulhu game, which I really enjoyed, and I do DM a lot of D&D horror sessions. D&D can absolutely foster a horror atmosphere if you play your cards right and you have the right party. I luckily have both. I've loved to scare my party. One of the scariest moments in our campaign was with this portal with a bunch of strewn body parts everywhere. And they were essentially hinting that some kind of creature was trying to construct a body in our world. They weren't getting the details right, like the bodies lacked important things like a nervous system or a respiratory system. But as the flesh started getting newer and newer, as they go down this timeline of all these failed attempts, they start realizing that whatever creature, whatever entity is on the other side of this gateway is getting better and better at adapting to our world. And soon, it will be done. And the party were freaking out this whole time. They were really, truly frightened of whatever was on the other side. Like, it's essentially creating life from nothing, very casually. And it's been attempting this for some time. Like, what's it doing? What does it want? The mystery behind it, the unknown, it really did frighten them. And I love that. Not every horror part of D&D needs to be in combat. A lot of it is going to be tension that's built up through the environment and through your descriptions. And that is how you so-called play your cards right. The other side of that coin is harder. Your party needs to be able to take it seriously, and that sounds stupid, and it kind of is, but you do need to have a party that will treat the horror with the appropriate amount of seriousness. If they just respond with a bunch of jokes, then it diffuses the whole situation and doesn't become nearly as fun, right? So you need to have party members that will take it with that same sort of tone so that you can build up this horror atmosphere. But if you don't, I wouldn't recommend it, because there's nothing wrong with just going with a happy-go-lucky game. If that's the kind of party that you have, that's the kind of party you have, and that's the kind of party you're running your game for. Don't try to force them to play in a horror game if that's not what they want. But if that's what they do want, and they're willing to accept that horrific atmosphere, then it is perfect. Play your cards right, and you can get some really cool stuff out of it, even if you're playing D&D and not a horror-catered system. Question from Metal Murderer: what is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? If it's European, 24 miles per hour. Question from Ethan Morill: do you prefer the way Wizards of the Coast is taking D&D races? That is, removing standard ability scores, languages, and some other defining features. Or do you like the way it was done before, with characters having specific advantages that made sense for their race? They're doing that? I haven't noticed. I honestly never put much stock into races as build crafting. Like, when a race fits with the class I'm picking, it's just like oh, That's convenient. Like, I was making a goblin gunslinger, and when I realized the goblin variation I was using gave us +2 dexterity, I was like, oh, that's nice. And then I moved on. But the primary reason I picked goblin is because goblins are just the kind of race I wanted for that character. It made sense. I don't mind that they're doing it because I haven't noticed. I would prefer that races do have a distinct feel to each of them. Like, that's part of D&D to me. I prefer the Skyrim approach to races rather than the World of Warcraft approach to races. World of Warcraft races are really just like the skin that you choose. It's not a huge deal. Like, your race has a bonus, but in gameplay, it rarely comes into play other than at really, really high level content where you need some sort of racial ability to maybe get a slight edge. In Skyrim, for what I recall, when I first played Skyrim, I was surprised that each race had very distinct advantages or disadvantages. Like, if you were to make a mage, a Breton is far, far better than a Nord. I would prefer that rather than just making them each skins with abilities that could possibly give you an advantage. But, I mean, the races that I've seen in the Player's Handbook, they do have some degree of that. Like, they have skill bonuses that make them better at certain classes. Some of them have very powerful racial bonuses, like Tieflings getting 3 pretty good spells, Variant Humans getting a free feat, ASMR getting amazing bonuses like Resistance to Necrotic and Radiant damage. I mean, they're pretty distinct. They're not as distinct as maybe some people would like, and I can definitely see some cool homebrew mechanics that give races much more bonuses. Overall, I don't mind the 5th edition races. If I'm to critique 5th edition, that's not something I bring up, like, at all. What NPC of your creation are you most proud of / disappointed in? Okay, this is a fun one. So, most proud of, I will say that my favorite NPC I've ever created is probably Kalia Solfero. If you remember from earlier, Crawford Cyrillish, that Machiavellian conspirator. Yeah, this is his daughter, his adopted daughter, and she was a major player in my first campaign. Kalia was my attempt to take the assassin, badass, edgelord trope and try to turn it on its head. She is an assassin. She's very good at killing people. She's killed a lot. She's known as the Crown Killer in my world because during the big war that was essentially like the prequel to the campaign, she was a political assassin who killed a fair amount of barony, and she was quite famous for it. She got a nickname and everything. There was a legend built around her. So you'd think that she'd be this like very socially confident, very in control person, but she's not. She's incredibly awkward. It makes sense for her character. I mean, she didn't have much of a childhood to speak of. Hell, she didn't really even have a formal education. Crawford Cyrillish, her adoptive father, he tried his best, but really he picked a vengeful, angry child off the streets, and through his business of, well, essentially being a crime boss and a spy master, he only fueled that part of her even more. And I played his character as very regretful of that decision because he feels he never gave her the proper childhood that she deserved. And through the course of the campaign, the party really softened up to her and she softened up to them. I mean, they're her only real friends in the entire world. I mean, she has them, she has Crawford, and she sort of has her auntie, the warlord sovereign, who is a very powerful, distant ruler. So, okay, maybe not her auntie. So she has Crawford, her adoptive father, and the party, and that's it. And I really loved playing her character. She was really fun. She's also the only NPC or PC I've ever played to have a romance, and that was surprisingly enjoyable. I liked playing out the romance in this game because, well, in case you guys are unaware, again, I've brought this up a couple times, but I'm asexual, aromantic. I don't have a lot of experience in romance. I have played romances before in impromptu acting, on the stage, it's happened, but I've always had a script, or I've always had some idea of what I'm doing, or a partner who I'm familiar with to play out that situation. In D&D, it was a lot more spontaneous. It was me and the Blood Hunter player, Kyla. It was the two of us playing two very awkward characters, and it was really fun. The couple ended up being really compelling. The party loved them, and I'm really proud of what we did there. Kalia was a cool character paired with another cool character, Daphne Nordstrom, a blood hunter with a little bit more confidence than her. They bounced off each other really well, and I'm really happy that the two of them ended up together at the end of the campaign. In terms of NPCs, I'm a little disappointed in the Sovereign, Kalia's auntie / Crawford's sister. In case you can't tell, this family, I put a lot into their characters because I loved writing all of them. But yeah, the Sovereign was definitely the weak link of the 3 characters, and not because she was a bad character. I think she was a really cool character, and the party liked her a lot, but I didn't get to use her that much, because just the nature of her being this powerful warlord, and the party just not interacting with her often because she didn't have any quest hooks of her own, she never got to send the party on quests, she never had the party visit her city, so I didn't get to use her as often. She was always this ominous presence in the background. And that kind of sucks because her character was really compelling. She is this warlord who's fought her entire life since she was a child, and now she yearns for peace and a simpler life, but being the sovereign of a huge nation, it really doesn't allow for that. So she runs away, goes and sings in random taverns under disguise, just living with the people, but it's really just a fleeting escape. I liked that character, and the party liked her a lot when they found her in the tavern just singing. It was a really, really cool moment because there was a bard in the party and they bonded over their shared musical interests. But unfortunately, just because I didn't design a lot of quest hooks around her and the party never visited her city, she never became as prominent of a character as I wanted her to be, even if she was really fun to write. If you guys enjoyed this episode of Q&Play and you want to let me know, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then please do hit subscribe and subscribe to Crispy's Tavern. And finally, if you want to leave your own thoughts, go down to the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment honor to Ash to reference the game I'm playing in the background and to let me know you made it to the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.